As I sit this morning and as I prepare to go to work, um, all my lighting is just so dim. But as I prepare to go to work, and as I sit and I reflect and I think about um, my people and my ancestors, and I think about identity and how we as African Americans, how we struggle for identity. Um, and I think about how our ancestors, how they were taken from this land, from, the motherland, Africa, and how they were boarded onto ships and stripped of their identity as they were taken from different tribes, and as they tried to communicate to one another. And, I sit and I wonder who knew how to separate them from their native languages and to make sure that they could not speak to one another. The first portion of assimilating them and stripping them from their identity so they couldn't talk to one another and communicate with one another. Stripping one of his or her identity. And as they sailed on those ships and as they communed with one another and finally reached the land that they were going to be enslaved in, and as they still tried to communicate with one another, and as they were told that you were no longer Zulu, or they were told that you were no longer Congolese, or you were told, or they were told that they were no longer this and they were no longer that, and they were told not to speak their native tongue, or to that they were no longer who they were. They were stripped of everything, of language, of culture, of everything. So here they are in this foreign land trying to be a community now with one another, fractured into pieces, living, scratching, surviving, but still at the same time nurturing, loving one another, coming together, communing with one another, forming new identities with each other. Identity. No longer being able to identify with their African heritage. Now, what would they do? Now, they are now servitude, or now servants to slaves, stripped, made into inhumans, slaves, identity made into human animals, working day to day without identity. Auctioned off on the auction block to the highest bidder. No longer made human, but cattle, woman, man, child, no matter what. Identity stripped. No longer African, no longer human. But still, they knew that they were African, trying to hold on to every bit of their humanity, teaching one another, holding on to the simplest ways of the life that they were used to. Identity. So Our ancestors, they scraped and they survived, and they tried to pass on to us a pride. African, yes, African is still in us. They say, no, we're African Americans. No, we are still Africans. African is still in us. African is in me. African is in you. Tongue stolen, but still survives. It's still spoken, even though I don't know which one my ancestors used to speak. But I know African is still in me. I have identity. This skin, brown and bronze, and it could be caramelized, or African still lives in me. Identity. We have to wake up and we have to see African still lives in me. We have an identity. We have to see ourselves through the Creator who made you, who made me. With pride, I wear this melon, you see. I wear this melon, you see. Every day I cannot get away from this melon. African, I am what you see. I am African, African American, whatever you want to call me. I have an identity, and it's what you see. And if you don't never identify with me, that's all right with me. 'Cause guess what? My African, it still resides in me. So I rise every morning and I look in the mirror and I see all of those African ancestors that survived. And I live today. I was just thinking about that this morning. So I hope you enjoyed that. Be blessed. Many blessings. And know that I'm living life and living it well. And when I think about all of my African ancestors and how they survived, and how they say that we do not have an identity, that we were stripped. True. All of this is all true. But we still have an identity. Although tongues were stolen, although you may not know what tribe you were from, but you can go get a DNA test and you can still find out where you originated from and all those good things. But I still have an identity because this melon does not lie. This melon right here, it does not lie. And I can still have a pride in who God has created me to be, whether this United States of America will ever recognize the struggle our ancestors went through, whether we will ever be compensated for all of the harsh treatment our ancestors went through, how we built this land. Whether they will ever say, that we contribute to the building of this world. We know we contribute to the building of this United States of America, of the building of this world. That's a fact. That's written in stone and in history. I'm online, babe. Give me a minute. And that, we cannot deny that. But we have to stop making excuses for not taking pride in who we are and how God has created us. And if we don't never get our 40 acres and a mule, we have still carved a way, and we can still pave a way for ourselves. And I know Black Lives Matter, and we do matter. But we got to stop killing one another. We have to support one another, build up our community. Our black dollars mean something, and we make this United States go round and round with our black dollars. We are one of the biggest consumers of product. And if we understood the power that we actually had, oh my goodness, we would turn the United States upside down if we came together and we really unified. But we have to start somewhere. I don't know why this is weighing heavy on my heart. We have to start somewhere. But this morning, I just want you to know that Africa lives in you. The African, that person who survived, who scraped, who lived, who on that boat, on the middle passage, that was squeezed in those boats. That woman that was squeezed in that boat, who was mistreated, who was visited by the master in the middle of the night, who had to work in those fields, work in that house, who had to allow, who birthed those babies, who had to go back to those fields, who endured so much, lived, and you are a product of them living. You are a product of them living. So you do have a heritage. You may not know it orally, but you live because of that heritage. You live because that person survived. They survived that auction block. They survived that brutality. They survived living on that plantation. They survived that emancipation. They survived wherever they came from and they migrated. They survived living up here in the north. They survived living in the south. They survived. You are here. You are a product of that. We have something to hold on to. And you say you haven't come from something. You've come from something. Pick up a book and read it. You may not orally know. You may not specifically know. But you tangibly know that you come from something, because guess what? This flesh is here. So you do know. So wake up this morning. Live a life worthy of the struggle. Stop making excuses. We need to stop making excuses for killing and murdering and not supporting one another. Black queens, be the queens that you are. Kings, be the kings that you are. Queens, take care of your household and your children. Support your kings. Kings, support your queens. Stop abandoning your families. Take care of your children. And I'm not saying all of you don't take care of your children, but there's many of you who don't. Stop abandoning your babies. Take care of them. And queens, you as well. You may be in the households, but you have abandoned your babies emotionally. You may provide for them, but you have been stagnant and you have been emotionally separated. You go to work, you keep a roof over their heads, but you don't communicate with your children. We can do better. That's come our children are running around here amok and angry and nasty, some of them. That's the reason why. Some of them are just rebellious because they're just rebellious, because they don't respect nothing. They feel a sense of entitlement. But we can do better as a people. We can all do better as a people. Economically, we can do better. We can support one another instead of being like crabs in a bucket. We see somebody pull themselves up and we pull them down. Or we become so rich we forget about everybody else because we didn't got ours. Come on, we can do better than this. Or we become so jealous because somebody else then made their money. And we become so blinded and become so jealous that we're willing to take someone else's life. Either physically or just slander them to the point that we have to stop this stuff. It's embedded hatred. It's embedded hatred. And I'm telling you, it's been systematically programmed into us to hate one another. And it's been a plan. It's planned since slavery. Embedded hatred. But God never intended for us to hate one another. We can change our mindsets. We can make a difference in one another's lives. We can change. I'm convinced of that. Come on. Say we don't have an identity. We do have an identity. Africa lives in us. We are African. We are African. We are. We live. We breathe. We lived. My ancestors lived. If they didn't live, I wouldn't be here. All right, come on. Let's get ourselves together. Black lives do matter. Come on, let's unify. Let's do this thing. Let's live better. Let's be better. Let's show them. All right, I just had to get that off my chest this morning. All right, I done got that off my chest. And as I say, loving the skin, this melon that God has put me in, I'm living and loving this life. And remember, you only got one life to live. So live it well. Live it well. And remember, Peace and blessings to you all.